The world awoke to chaos. It began as whispers on obscure internet forums, dark predictions of electromagnetic interference and weather patterns that defied logic. The skies over Asia turned an unearthly green, and within hours, storms roared over the Atlantic with a power unseen in modern history. Governments across continents were left scrambling to restore communications. But a sinister silence fell. All major satellites ceased function, leaving Earth isolated in a new and terrifying void. In a high-rise office in Washington, D.C., Captain Kara Voss stood facing a row of large screens, each flashing an array of static and distorted footage from around the globe. Panic had spread like wildfire. Newsrooms were emptied, streetlights and air traffic control towers blinked off, and military radars jammed. Kara, a weathered leader with a reputation for calm in the face of chaos, clenched her jaw, her gaze hard as steel as she watched the screens fall to darkness one by one. Without warning, a low hum filled the room. It started as a barely perceptible tremor, creeping into her ears and vibrating through the walls. It grew, overtaking the entire building and making every loose piece of metal shiver in unison. Her heart pounding, Kara exchanged a glance with her superior, General Ellis, his usually composed expression now etched with worry. And then the voice came. "Human civilization," it boomed, resonating through every device, every radio, every unpowered phone. "You are to be colonized." The voice was cold, clinical, yet oddly articulate, as though it had learned each language flawlessly and yet without empathy. The message continued. "Your capacities have been assessed and deemed negligible. Resistance will be futile. Cooperation will ensure minimal casualties." Kara's stomach dropped. The alien voice, her mind barely wrapped around the thought, and yet it was undeniable. Every instinct within her screamed to resist, but she could feel the paralyzing fear that her colleagues, her soldiers, and undoubtedly all of humanity would feel in response. They hadn't been given a choice. They were being taken over. Within hours, the alien ships became visible to the naked eye, massive shadowed forms hovering above the world's capitals and key military sites. Reports flooded in from every continent. A force of incomprehensible size and technology had arrived. With each passing minute, the presence in the sky loomed closer, more intimidating, asserting dominance without firing a single weapon. Kara's military instincts kicked in. She knew panic would be the first enemy. She gathered her small team, a collection of the finest minds and soldiers under her command, and issued a directive to prepare evacuation protocols, though she was painfully aware that the aliens had already locked humanity in. But beneath her cool commands, a knot of anger and defiance was forming. Humanity wouldn't surrender without a fight. In the base, her team gathered in the dim, red-lit war room. Maps sprawled across the table, and analysts spoke in hushed, tense voices. "Captain Voss, every major communications channel has been cut," reported Riker, her lead tech specialist, eyes red-rimmed with fatigue. Kara nodded, keeping her tone calm. "We'll go underground, hardwire everything we've got to local networks. If they think we're negligible, we'll make sure they know they're wrong." Her team nodded with steely determination, but it was clear they were grappling with the reality of an enemy they could not yet comprehend. As they began working on localized communication strategies, another tremor shook the base, rattling the metal walls and echoing ominously. Kara's grip on the table tightened. Just then, General Ellis appeared, his usually calm demeanor hardened. "Captain Voss," he said, his voice low, "we've received intelligence from multiple underground sources. This colonization isn't about resources. The aliens' initial scans apparently didn't detect anything they valued. They see us as inconsequential, harmless. They're here to prepare Earth as a staging ground for something larger, and they don't intend to leave survivors." The room fell silent. Kara felt the weight of his words sink in. The aliens didn't just underestimate humanity's strength. They didn't see them as anything worth fighting. Her pulse quickened, a spark of defiance flaring within her. They were wrong. "We've faced our end before," she said, her voice low and fierce. "They think we'll go quietly, but they're going to learn what humanity is capable of." At that moment, a deep, resounding hum echoed across the city. A shadow passed over the war room, filling the space with an unnatural chill. It was one of their ships, hovering low enough that its underbelly obscured the sky. Kara, along with the rest of her team, looked up through the narrow war room window. The craft's colossal size was a terrifying reminder of what they were up against. But she stood firm, her voice sharp with resolve. "Prepare every last fighter, every civilian able to fight. They may think they can wipe us out without a struggle, but let's give them a reason to remember humanity's strength." And with that, Kara Voss rallied her team. The world might have been plunged into darkness, but the first spark of resistance had been ignited. The underground bunkers were barely lit, cold and cramped, a network of old military shelters refitted for modern warfare, yet never intended to face what humanity now stood against. Kara's team, the few specialists and soldiers she trusted with her life, had hunkered down into one of the last communication centers. Here, amidst walls of concrete and steel, they would build humanity's response. As Kara stepped into the main chamber, her sharp gaze swept over her team. Some were hardened veterans like herself, while others were scientists, tech experts, and engineers whose lives had been turned upside down overnight. In the corner, an emergency power generator hummed erratically, but it was enough to keep their small arsenal of computers and surveillance monitors running. "Captain Voss," said Dr. Lena Morales, a quantum physicist from MIT, who'd only joined the team days earlier. Her hands were steady, but her face was pale. "We've begun tracking the patterns of the alien ships above. They're repositioning every 2 hours, hovering over military installations, power plants, and schools. It's clear they're mapping out every inch of our infrastructure." Kara's jaw clenched. "They're scoping out every weakness, seeing if we'll react. If they're assuming we'll just lie down, they're about to be unpleasantly surprised." She glanced at Major Jackson Riker, her longtime second-in-command. His rugged face bore the marks of countless battles, but the lines on his face seemed deeper now. "Riker, we need a system of messengers. If they've taken out global comms, we'll relay information the old way, by people. I want runners who know these tunnels better than anyone. Underground, if we have to." Riker nodded. "Already working on it. We've got volunteers across every sector, all the way to the West Coast. They're scared, but they're ready." He paused, eyes narrowing. "But there's another problem, Kara. Our supplies aren't going to hold. Food, medical kits. Half our storerooms were raided during the initial attacks." The weight of their situation pressed on Kara, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We'll go out. Small units. Quietly. We'll take only what we need and return without being seen. Those who volunteer know the risks." A silence fell over the room as the reality of the plan settled. They were drastically outnumbered and under-equipped, and the alien forces, clearly coordinated and calculating, had technology that surpassed their understanding. Yet, as Kara looked around the dim room, she saw something she hadn't expected. Defiance in every face. Despite the fear, her team was ready. Hours later, she led her first scavenging unit into the devastated city above. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of smoke and burnt metal. Buildings that once towered proudly were now skeletal frames, torn apart by the arrival of the alien ships. The only sounds were the distant hum of alien craft overhead and the occasional crumble of concrete. Kara signaled her team to move cautiously through the streets, her eyes scanning every shadow, every rooftop. "Captain," whispered Felix, one of her younger recruits, barely out of training but with a determination she admired. "Do you think they know we're down here? Hiding? Waiting?" She kept her voice low, her tone unwavering. "If they suspect it, they're too arrogant to care. They think we're inconsequential, remember?" She caught his eye. "That's our advantage." They moved from building to building, gathering what supplies they could, canned goods, med kits, even batteries, anything that might sustain their efforts underground. But each step brought them closer to the terrifying reality of their new world. The wreckage wasn't just buildings. There were homes, schools, hospitals, all lying in ruin, remnants of a life that now felt like a distant memory. The mission was nearly complete when an unexpected noise froze them all in their tracks. Kara held up her hand, signaling the team to take cover. She narrowed her eyes toward the source of the sound, a faint, mechanical whir, growing louder. An alien drone, its lights casting an eerie blue glow, hovered just overhead. "Get down! Stay absolutely still," she ordered, her voice barely a whisper. They pressed themselves against the cold concrete, hearts pounding as the drone scanned the area. Kara could see its scanning beam sweeping closer, searching with mechanical precision. She clenched her jaw, her pulse thudding as she tried to remain perfectly calm. After an agonizingly long moment, the drone drifted on, disappearing around a corner. Kara let out a breath. "All clear. Move fast, but keep low." They made it back to the bunker without incident, but the close encounter had rattled everyone. Kara could feel the tension thick in the air. As they unloaded the supplies, she turned to address her team, her voice steady and resolute. "I won't lie to you," she began, meeting each pair of eyes. "This enemy is beyond anything we've faced. They think we're scattered, frightened, and powerless. But I want each of you to remember this. Our greatest strength is our resilience, our capacity to adapt. They can strip us of our weapons, destroy our cities, but they cannot strip us of our will to fight. We're going to show them what humanity is capable of, no matter what it takes." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Even those who had previously looked uncertain now wore expressions of fierce resolve. Dr. Morales stepped forward, holding a device Kara didn't recognize, some kind of jury-rigged radar scanner. "Captain, I've been analyzing the alien communications frequencies. I think I might be able to intercept them, maybe even decrypt a signal or two. If we can figure out how they communicate, we might gain some insight into their plans." Kara's eyes gleamed with interest. "Do it. Use whatever resources you need." She looked around the bunker. "Everyone, from now on, Dr. Morales' research is a priority. We're going to take everything we can from them." As the team dispersed to begin their work, Riker approached her, his expression grim. "Kara, you know we can't keep up this level of resistance for long. Even with Morales' tech, we're going to be outmatched. And the people, they're scared. They need hope." She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "Then we'll give it to them, Riker. We'll be the spark they need. And if they ever doubt, we remind them why we fight." But even as she spoke, a nagging question lingered at the back of her mind. Would it be enough? Could humanity's scattered, desperate resistance truly stand against the might of an interstellar force? As she walked through the dimly lit bunker, Kara couldn't shake the ominous feeling that this was only the beginning. The aliens had underestimated them, yes, but they were smart, calculating, and deadly. The next time they crossed paths, Kara had no doubt they would be ready. Days passed in tense silence. Kara and her team operated in the shadows, managing hit-and-run missions for supplies and monitoring alien movements with Dr. Morales' hastily assembled signal scanners. They'd lost 2 of their best men in the last raid, ambushed by an alien patrol with weapons that seemed to drain the very air of light. But the effort had paid off, as Morales now had a constant feed on alien communications, a small triumph in the darkness. One evening, in the bunker's cramped war room, Dr. Morales burst in, eyes wide and clutching a dusty map of Antarctica. The room went quiet as she spread it over the table, her hands trembling. "Captain Voss, I've intercepted something unusual," she said, a mix of excitement and urgency coloring her tone. "It's not just chatter about tactical movements. They're transmitting data about something buried deep in the ice beneath Antarctica." Kara's brow furrowed. "Are you saying they found something of ours?" Morales shook her head, pointing to coordinates on the map. "This isn't ours, and from what I could decode, it's not theirs either." The aliens are planning an excavation. They call it a central power core, but based on what I've translated, they're worried it might be volatile. Kara's mind raced. The world's oldest secrets, buried beneath thousands of years of ice, were the last remnants of something ancient, perhaps older than humanity itself. Could it be a forgotten technology? Maybe a weapon? She glanced at Riker, who stood by her side, his gaze locked on the map. "What's the chance we can get there before they do?" he asked, eyes alight with the thrill of action. Morales hesitated, her face grim. "We'd need to mobilize immediately, and the alien presence in Antarctica is already significant. They're setting up a perimeter, bringing down some of their heaviest equipment. We're talking about dodging entire battalions." Kara straightened, a dangerous glint in her eye. If they're that desperate to secure it, it must be worth it. "We've got one chance to grab hold of whatever that thing is, and I'm not letting it slip." Within hours, Kara had handpicked a team of 12, the best scouts, scientists, and soldiers she could spare. They geared up in silence, a mix of grim determination and nervous energy fueling their movements. For a moment, Kara stood back, watching them check their equipment, exchange somber nods, and mentally prepare themselves for the journey. This was no ordinary mission. This was the heart of their gamble against extinction. They set out before dawn, moving through miles of icy wasteland, their path lit only by the distant glow of alien outposts in the snow. The journey was grueling, and the cold bit through their layers, numbing fingers and stiffening limbs. But the goal kept them going. As they neared the coordinates, the glint of alien machinery gleamed under the moonlight. Half a mile ahead, a line of alien vehicles and excavation equipment surrounded a massive fissure in the ice. Kara raised her hand, signaling the team to take cover. They dropped to their knees, crawling to the edge of the ridge overlooking the site. The scene was chilling. Towering alien constructs cast long shadows over a dark pit that seemed to stretch endlessly into the earth. Bright, piercing lights shone down, illuminating a strange black structure embedded in the ice, its edges sharp and almost too precise to be natural. Around it, aliens moved methodically, securing the perimeter with weapons and robotic sentries. Morales' voice crackled softly over the comm. "Captain, that structure, it's like nothing I've ever seen. The ice core around it is radiating in wavelengths that don't match anything from Earth's geological records. I think it's a power source." Kara narrowed her eyes, taking in the scene. "Then that's our target. Riker, split the team. Half of us will create a diversion, drawing the patrols away from the structure. Morales, you and the others get as close as you can and see if you can find an access point." They moved quickly, their breaths clouding in the frigid air. Kara led the diversion team, skirting the edge of the excavation site and firing quick shots at the nearest alien patrols. Lights flashed, and alien alarms blared, a deep, resonant sound that made the ice tremble beneath them. Within moments, alien sentries broke formation and began closing in on their location, lasers flashing through the dark. Meanwhile, Morales and her team made their way to the edge of the fissure, slipping past the now distracted guards. The strange black structure towered over them, nearly swallowed by the ice. Up close, it looked even more unnatural, a solid, seamless monolith that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. They reached what looked like an entrance, a narrow slit in the structure's side. Morales examined it closely, running her scanner along its surface. "It's emitting a low-frequency signal, like a pulse. I think this is some kind of door." She pressed a gloved hand against the surface, and the door slid open, a low hum filling the air as ancient gears shifted. "Inside, quick," she whispered, ushering the team through. The interior was dark, colder than the ice outside, and filled with complex machinery unlike anything they'd seen. Strange symbols were etched along the walls, glowing faintly as if alive. It felt like stepping into the heart of a machine designed by minds far more advanced than their own. "Morales, what are we looking at?" one of the soldiers whispered, his voice laced with awe and fear. Morales shook her head, her face lit by the eerie glow. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's powerful. And if the aliens were right, it could be volatile in the wrong hands." As they moved deeper, they came upon a chamber filled with strange, crystalline structures arranged in a spiral pattern. At the center was a device pulsing with blue light, casting an ominous glow that filled the entire chamber. Morales pulled up her scanner, eyes wide with realization. "This is it. This is what they're after. It's not just a power source, it's a conduit. It could be harnessed to amplify energy, maybe even disrupt entire systems." Kara's voice came through the comm, tense and breathless. "Morales, we're out of time. They're closing in on us, and we've only got minutes before they find you. Can you activate it?" Morales swallowed hard, her hands hovering over the controls. "I think so, but if I'm wrong, it could destroy this whole area, maybe even more." "Do it," Kara ordered, her voice filled with grim determination. "If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as we can." Taking a steadying breath, Morales keyed in the commands, her fingers trembling as she activated the alien conduit. The device pulsed faster, the blue light intensifying until it filled the entire chamber. And then, with a sudden lurch, the light exploded outward, a shock wave rippling through the ice and up into the night sky. Outside, the alien machinery stuttered, the robotic sentries seizing up and collapsing, their circuits fried by the sudden surge. Kara and her team watched in astonishment as the alien forces stumbled, their weapons flickering and their vehicles grinding to a halt. For the first time, the aliens appeared vulnerable, scrambling to recover from the unexpected blast. A surge of hope shot through Kara. "Fall back! We've got the advantage. Let's get our people out of here." Morales and her team emerged from the structure, their eyes wide with shock. The conduit had worked, if only for a moment, shifting the odds ever so slightly in humanity's favor. But as they retreated into the icy darkness, Kara knew this was just the beginning. They'd taken their first shot, but the aliens would retaliate. And as the team disappeared back into the blizzard, one thought echoed through Kara's mind. Humanity had struck back, and now the aliens knew that they had underestimated the fight within them. The alien conduit had released an unprecedented surge, creating a ripple effect felt across the globe. For the first time since the invasion began, humans witnessed alien forces falter, their technology momentarily disrupted by an energy source beyond their control. But it was only a small victory in a war far from over. Kara and her team returned to the bunker, spirits high despite the bitter cold that clung to their clothes and numbed their fingers. As they crossed the threshold into the dimly lit base, they were met with stunned silence. Every eye turned toward them, a mix of hope and fear etched on every face. Dr. Morales was the first to speak, her voice shaking with a mixture of triumph and uncertainty. "The conduit, it worked. The surge shut down a radius of their technology. But it's more powerful than we imagined." She held up a data tablet, showing the radiation levels in the area where they detonated the pulse. The power it released was almost uncontrollable. If we tried to use it again, we might not survive the fallout. Kara's gaze hardened. "We didn't survive this long to die quietly. Morales, can we harness it in a way that limits the danger?" Morales hesitated. "Maybe, but we'd have to get close. It's unstable, and one wrong move could trigger an even larger release." Kara looked around, reading the resolve in her team's faces. "Now then we'll find a way to use it without letting it take us out in the process." But just as she began to issue orders, a sharp alarm blared through the bunker. The faint hum of alien technology echoed overhead, followed by the piercing beam of an alien scanner sweeping over the bunker entrance. Kara's heart leapt to her throat. They'd been discovered. "Everyone, prepare for breach!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the rising panic. Soldiers scrambled into position, rifles raised toward the bunker's steel doors. A low vibration pulsed through the floor, growing louder until it felt like the walls themselves were trembling under the weight of some unseen force. Kara could feel the alien energy pressing down on them, as if the walls of the bunker were being squeezed by an invisible fist. Suddenly, the main entrance door buckled, groaning under the pressure, and with a deafening crash, it tore inward, revealing a mass of alien soldiers. They moved with precise, mechanical efficiency, their dark eyes gleaming with the cold calculation of a species bred for conquest. Kara didn't hesitate. She fired a shot, signaling her team to unleash a hailstorm of bullets and explosives. The corridor erupted in a cacophony of sound and smoke, bodies clashing in the narrow space, each side fighting with a ruthless determination. Kara shouted commands, her voice barely audible over the gunfire. Just as they began to push the aliens back, a blast rocked the bunker, throwing Kara and her team against the walls. For a moment, her vision blurred, her ears ringing. When she forced her eyes open, she saw something that filled her with horror. A new figure had emerged, towering over the alien soldiers. It was an alien commander, encased in dark, shimmering armor that seemed to shift and pulse as if alive. Its face was hidden behind a smooth mask, but Kara could feel its gaze, cold and dismissive. It raised a hand, emitting a wave of energy that pulsed outward, forcing every human to the ground. The alien soldiers ceased fire, stepping back as their commander advanced toward Kara, who struggled to rise, her limbs numb. "You?" The alien commander's voice was a resonant hiss, barely recognizable in any Earth language. "You are resistance! You are insignificant!" Kara met its gaze, her fury flaring. "We're more than you think!" The commander tilted its head, almost amused. "You are weaker than expected, yet you persist." It studied her with a calculated curiosity. An interesting defiance, but pointless. Kara clenched her jaw. "Then you're in for a surprise." Before she could react, the alien commander raised its arm, sending out another wave of energy. This one focused directly on her. Pain surged through her body, searing and relentless. But she refused to break. She locked eyes with the commander, refusing to show weakness. Then, through the haze of pain, she heard Dr. Morales' voice over her earpiece. "Kara, we still have the conduit's power surge coordinates. We can overload the system here and use it against them. It'll take out everything within a mile radius, including us, but it's our only chance." Kara's mind raced. There was no time for doubt. She glanced at her team, bruised and bloodied, yet still fighting with every ounce of strength they had. She pressed her earpiece, her voice steady. "Do it. We're not leaving anything for them." Morales didn't hesitate. A series of beeps echoed over the comm as she keyed in the overload sequence. Kara could feel the energy building, a low hum vibrating through the walls. She locked eyes with Riker, who nodded, understanding the gravity of what was about to happen. They had seconds, maybe less, but they weren't going down without a fight. With a final burst of strength, Kara raised her weapon, firing a volley of shots at the alien commander. The creature staggered, caught off guard by the intensity of the assault. Her team joined in, their defiance a last, desperate stand against an impossible force. The energy pulsed, the walls trembling as the conduit prepared to release its final surge. But then, something unexpected happened. The alien commander stepped back, its gaze narrowing. It spoke in its strange, guttural language, and the soldiers retreated, moving out of the bunker with unnerving speed. "Kara!" Morales' voice crackled over the comm. "They're pulling out. It's like they're afraid of the conduit's power. They're retreating." Kara's heart pounded as she watched the aliens vanish into the shadows, the commander lingering for one last moment. It met her gaze, its dark eyes gleaming with a cold fury. "This is not the end. We will return." And with that, it turned, disappearing into the night. The bunker fell silent, save for the faint hum of the conduit winding down. Kara exhaled, the weight of what had just transpired sinking in. They had survived, but only barely, and the conduit's power had saved them. The aliens had seen what humanity could harness, and for now, it seemed, they had been forced to reconsider. Kara turned to her team, their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion. She met Riker's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. They'd won a temporary reprieve, but the war was far from over. As they regrouped, Morales approached, her expression thoughtful. "Kara, there's something I need you to see," she said, holding up her tablet. "The readings from the conduit, they're fluctuating. It's almost as if it's responding to us, like it has a will of its own." Kara frowned. "What do you mean?" Morales hesitated. "I don't know yet, but I think this conduit isn't just a weapon. It's something alive, something ancient and far more complex than we realize. It could be a key to something bigger, something the aliens fear as much as we do." Kara absorbed her words, a spark of hope igniting within her. If they could unlock the conduit's secrets, it might turn the tide of the war. But the risk was immense. One wrong move, and they'd be destroyed. But if they succeeded, humanity might have a fighting chance. She turned to her team, her voice steady with newfound determination. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us. Rest while you can. Tomorrow, we start figuring out what this thing really is." As her team dispersed, Kara stood alone, her gaze fixed on the conduit, pulsing faintly in the dark. They were facing an enemy beyond comprehension, an ancient power that could either save them or doom them. But for the first time, she felt a surge of hope. The aliens had underestimated them, and now, with the power of the conduit, they had the means to make them regret it. The days following the encounter at the conduit were tense, as if the entire world held its breath, waiting for the aliens' response. Kara and her team worked tirelessly, analyzing every reading Morales had recorded from the conduit. Their focus sharpened with each passing hour. The conduit was indeed more than a weapon. It was a living system of energy, a force as ancient as the Earth itself, waiting for those with the knowledge to harness it. And now, that knowledge was humanity's last hope. The conduit pulsed with a low, eerie glow, emitting occasional bursts of energy that hummed through the bunker. Kara could feel its power just beneath the surface, as if it were whispering in a language too ancient to understand. Morales had set up scanners, data streams, and complex algorithms to track its energy patterns. It was unpredictable, but filled with potential. A double-edged sword that, if they could control it, might just level the playing field. But even as they worked, a sense of foreboding settled over the team. The aliens hadn't retaliated since their retreat from the conduit, which wasn't their usual tactic. Kara knew it was only a matter of time before they struck back. And when they did, it would be devastating. One night, as Kara was in the command room reviewing contingency plans with Riker, a distress call crackled through their makeshift radio setup. "This is Bravo Team. Bravo Team in Sector 3. We've been ambushed. They knew we were coming. Casualties." The line fizzled out in a burst of static. Kara's face hardened. Bravo Team was one of their most reliable groups, stationed at a critical supply depot. They'd been gathering medical supplies when the aliens descended on them. Kara felt the bitter sting of betrayal. Someone had tipped off the aliens. Riker cursed under his breath. "They were careful, Kara. There's no way they were spotted by chance. Someone's feeding the aliens our movements." Kara's mind raced. They'd been careful, moving covertly, trusting only a small circle of dedicated fighters. But the evidence was undeniable. There was a traitor among them. She scanned the room, her gaze falling on each face, searching for any hint of guilt or suspicion. "We have to find out who's responsible before more lives are lost," she said, her voice tight. "Riker, set up surveillance on all high-priority personnel. Nobody leaves the bunker alone." He nodded, his expression grim. "Understood, but it won't be easy. Whoever's doing this knows our protocols." The following days were tense. with every team member scrutinizing one another. Trust was fraying, and suspicion was an ever-present shadow. Still, they continued their work, knowing they couldn't afford to let fear tear them apart. Then, the unthinkable happened. Late one night, Kara was awakened by a blaring alarm and the sharp stench of smoke. She bolted upright, reaching for her weapon, and rushed into the main corridor. Fires raged throughout the bunker, and the sounds of shouting echoed down the hall. In the chaos, she caught sight of the alien soldiers, moving with lethal efficiency through the narrow passages, taking out resistance fighters one by one. "Riker!" she shouted over the din, spotting him as he directed a group of soldiers to secure the armory. "They breached us from the inside, Kara!" he yelled back, eyes wide with disbelief. "Someone disabled the primary security. Let them in without triggering any alerts." Rage surged through her. The traitor had struck, delivering them right into the aliens' hands. She grabbed her comm. "All units, fall back to the conduit chamber. We're not giving this bunker up without a fight." Kara led the retreat, her team rallying around her, fighting with everything they had. They forced the aliens back inch by inch, using every corridor and corner to their advantage. The alien soldiers were relentless, but so were they. At last, they reached the conduit chamber, sealing the doors behind them. The massive, pulsing structure loomed above them, casting an eerie glow over the survivors. Morales was already at the controls, frantically working to activate its defensive systems. Kara turned to the group, her gaze hard. "We're not going anywhere. If we're going down, we're taking every last one of them with us." Morales glanced up from her work, her face pale. "Kara, the conduit's power is fluctuating wildly. It's like it's reacting to the presence of the aliens, almost like it senses a threat." Kara's mind raced, grasping at any advantage. "Then let's turn that threat into an opportunity. Use the power fluctuations, overload the core. If we can't control it, we'll make it unstable enough to take them out." Just then, a figure stepped forward from the shadows, and Kara felt a surge of fury. It was Major Hart, one of her top-ranking officers and someone she'd trusted implicitly. "Kara, I didn't want it to come to this," he said, his voice calm but cold. She raised her weapon, her face contorted with rage. "Hart, you were the one. You led them here." Hart held up his hands, a twisted smile on his face. "You don't understand, Captain. These aliens, they're the future. They offered me a place in the new order, a chance to survive when humanity is wiped out." Kara's voice was a low, deadly whisper. "And you sold out the people you swore to protect?" Hart's eyes flashed with something between contempt and pity. "You're clinging to a lost cause. Kara, humanity is finished. You could have come with me. We could have been on the right side of history." Before she could respond, the door behind him exploded inward, and alien soldiers stormed the chamber. Hart took advantage of the chaos, diving into the shadows as the aliens opened fire. Kara ducked behind the conduit, returning fire with a grim determination. Morales was working frantically, the energy in the room building as the conduit's pulses grew stronger, the hum becoming a deafening roar. She looked up, her face resolute. "Kara, the overload is ready. But once it's activated, we'll have minutes, maybe seconds to get out before it detonates." Kara nodded, her voice steady. "Do it. We'll find a way out." The room shook as Morales hit the final command, and the conduit began to pulse faster, a blinding light emanating from its core. The alien soldiers hesitated, their movements faltering as the energy surged, disrupting their systems. Kara took advantage, rallying her team to push forward, forcing the aliens back toward the entrance. But even as they fought, she could see Hart slipping through the chaos, a smug grin on his face. He disappeared into the corridor, leaving them to face the consequences of his betrayal. Kara turned to her team, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We're not done yet. Get to the emergency exits. Move!" They raced through the bunker, the alien soldiers collapsing as the conduit's energy overload shorted out their systems. Kara and her team pushed forward, dodging explosions and falling debris as they made their way to the surface. Just as they reached the final corridor, a massive shockwave rocked the bunker, and the conduit detonated, sending a pulse of energy that erupted from the ground in a blinding column of light. The aliens screamed as their technology failed, their ships plummeting from the sky, their weapons disintegrating in their hands. Kara watched in awe as the aliens finally experienced fear, their arrogance stripped away by the raw, uncontrollable power of the conduit. But the cost was devastating. The bunker crumbled around them, and Kara knew that many of her comrades wouldn't make it out alive. As she stumbled to the surface, gasping for air, she looked back, watching the alien ships retreat into the distance, their forces shattered. Riker appeared at her side, bloodied but alive. "We did it, Kara. We sent them running." She nodded, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "For now. But Hart's still out there, and he won't be alone next time." As they stood amidst the ruins of their bunker, watching the alien ships vanish into the dark horizon, Kara felt a surge of grim determination. They'd survived the impossible, but the war was far from over. The aliens would be back, and now, she knew, they wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating humanity again, and this time, she would be ready. The blast from the conduit had been felt worldwide. Across continents, alien ships malfunctioned, their systems scrambled by the raw power unleashed from beneath the Antarctic ice. But the victory was fleeting. The alien forces, though weakened, reorganized quickly. In retaliation, they converged their strongest units upon Earth's major cities, vowing to eradicate every last trace of resistance. Weeks later, in the heart of a decimated New York City, Kara stood with what remained of her forces. The city's skyline was a shattered memory, twisted metal and rubble stretching out as far as the eye could see. Alien ships loomed ominously overhead, casting dark shadows over the once bustling streets. This was it, the last stronghold. If they lost New York, humanity's remnants would be scattered and left to fend for themselves. Riker, his face gaunt but resolute, approached her side. "They're massing on all fronts, Kara. No more reconnaissance, no scouts. It's like they know we're making our final stand." Kara nodded, her gaze steely. "Then we give them hell. Everyone who can hold a weapon, everyone who has a reason to fight, they need to be ready." She turned to the mixed crowd of soldiers, civilians, and children, turned warriors who had gathered around her. "This isn't about survival anymore. It's about making sure they remember us. So let's make them regret ever coming to our world." Her voice carried through the silence, igniting a spark in every pair of weary eyes. They were exhausted, battered, and many were armed with nothing more than makeshift weapons and salvaged supplies. But this was humanity's last hope. And Kara knew they'd fight to the very last. Across the river, the first wave of alien ships descended, hovering just above the water with an eerie silence. Kara could see them clearly from her position, their sleek, dark forms casting distorted reflections across the water's surface. The air was thick with tension as every soldier, young and old, stood in silent anticipation, weapons trained on the advancing enemy. Dr. Morales, who had miraculously survived the conduit's destruction, joined Kara at the front line. "I've activated the last conduit pulse transmitter," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of what it meant. "It's set to go off once we engage, but there's no guarantee it won't take us out too." Kara's face softened as she placed a reassuring hand on Morales' shoulder. "If it gives us even a fighting chance, it's worth it. We're not here for guarantees. We're here to show them what we're made of." The ground trembled as the alien troops advanced, their armor glinting in the faint light, their formation tight and unyielding. Kara raised her weapon, a determined glint in her eyes. "On my mark, everyone! Make every shot count!" A thunderous roar erupted as the two sides collided. Bullets, energy blasts, and improvised explosives filled the air as the humans charged with a fierce resolve, meeting the alien forces head-on. Kara fought alongside her soldiers, her every move precise and deadly. The battle was brutal, unrelenting, and soon the streets were thick with smoke and the deafening cacophony of warfare. Amidst the chaos, Riker shouted from his position behind a barricade. "Kara! They're coming in from the west flank! We're being overrun!" Kara's gaze darted to the left, where a new wave of alien soldiers advanced. Her heart pounded as she calculated their limited options. "Hold the line!" she called out, rallying the troops. "Morales, activate the conduit pulse." Morales, positioned atop a nearby rooftop with a clear view of the battlefield, keyed in the activation codes. She raised a handheld device, her thumb hovering over the button that would unleash the conduit's final surge. She met Kara's eyes, nodding with a mixture of fear and determination. Kara's voice rang out over the chaos. "Everyone, brace yourselves!" With a swift press, Morales triggered the conduit's energy pulse. A blinding flash erupted from the device, casting an eerie blue light across the city. Alien soldiers recoiled, their weapons sputtering and failing as the pulse disrupted their technology. Some fell to the ground, convulsing as the pulse short-circuited their systems. For a moment, hope surged through the human forces. They pushed forward, cutting down the stunned aliens with renewed fury. But the pulse's effects were temporary. As the energy waned, the aliens regrouped, adapting to the surge far faster than they'd anticipated. Soon, their forces were pressing forward again, relentless and unforgiving. Amidst the fierce fighting, a new figure appeared, a towering alien commander, encased in even more advanced armor, flanked by a squad of elite soldiers. Kara recognized the ruthless gaze beneath its visor. It was the same commander she had faced in the bunker, the one who had nearly killed her. The commander's voice echoed across the battlefield, directed at her. "Captain Voss, your defiance is persistent, but this ends now." Kara gritted her teeth, gripping her weapon tighter. "You're right about one thing. This ends here, but it won't be the way you think." The commander gestured to its troops, and they closed in, weapons trained on her. But Kara refused to back down. Her team rallied around her, forming a protective circle. They'd come too far, fought too hard to surrender now. Just then, Morales' voice crackled over the comm. "Kara, I think I've found a way to boost the pulse, but it'll require a direct connection to the conduit core. It's dangerous, but it might buy us the time we need." Kara's heart raced as she processed Morales' words. The core was deep beneath the city, and accessing it would be a near-suicidal mission. But it was the only chance they had left. "Do it!" she ordered, her voice firm. "Get down there and give us that boost." Morales hesitated, fear evident in her eyes. But she nodded. "I'll need a few minutes." "Go. We'll cover you," Kara replied, her voice laced with determination. She raised her weapon and turned to her team. "We hold them off until Morales gives the signal. No one gets past us." The battle resumed with even greater ferocity. Kara and her team fought desperately, fending off wave after wave of alien soldiers. The commander watched her, studying her moves as if fascinated by her unyielding defiance. At last, Morales' voice broke through the calm. "Kara, I'm ready. It's going to be big. Get everyone clear." Kara shouted over the noise. "Fall back! Pull back to the perimeter." But before they could retreat, the alien commander lunged forward, blocking their path. Its dark eyes locked onto Kara's, and for a brief, chilling moment, she saw a glimmer of respect in its gaze. "You fight like no other species we have encountered," it said, its tone almost reverent. "But strength without wisdom is futile." Kara's expression hardened. "Funny, I was about to say the same thing to you." The commander raised its weapon, a sleek, deadly-looking blade that shimmered with a dark energy. Kara squared her stance, ready to face the alien leader head-on. She knew it would be a fight to the death, and she had no intention of backing down. But before either could strike, a deafening blast rocked the ground, and a massive shockwave surged through the city as Morales activated the conduit's core. A blinding light erupted, enveloping the entire battlefield, consuming alien and human alike. Kara shielded her eyes, feeling the raw power surge around her, tearing through the streets and buildings. As the light faded, she opened her eyes, blinking through the haze. The alien forces were retreating, their ships rising rapidly into the sky, leaving the decimated city behind. Kara's breath caught in her throat as she watched the commander, standing amidst the ruins, its dark eyes meeting hers one last time. "This is not the end, Captain Voss," it said, its voice carrying an ominous promise. "We will return, and your defiance will be your undoing." With that, it turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving her standing alone amidst the ruin. The humans emerged from the rubble, battered and bloodied, but alive. They had held the line, and the aliens had been forced to retreat. For now, the battle was over, but Kara knew the war was far from won. As the sun rose over the shattered remains of New York, Kara stood with her team, her heart heavy with the losses they had endured. They had proven their strength, their resilience. They had shown the aliens that humanity would not go down without a fight. But she knew the aliens would be back. And next time, they would come with even greater force. This was only the beginning, and the real battle was yet to come. Dawn broke over the ruins of New York, casting a golden glow on the smoldering remains of the city. Dust and ash floated in the air, remnants of the fierce battle that had raged through the night. The alien forces had retreated into the sky, their ships nothing more than dark silhouettes against the morning sun. A tense silence settled over the streets, broken only by the crackle of fires and the distant sound of survivors calling out for one another. Kara stood on what was left of an overpass, gazing out at the decimated city. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood, her armor battered and scorched. But she was alive. They all were. Around her, the remnants of humanity's last resistance force gathered, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and relief. Riker approached her, limping slightly, his face pale but defiant. "We did it, Kara. We pushed them back, for now at least." She managed a weary nod. For now. She looked over her team, the people who had survived the impossible alongside her. They had lost friends, allies. So many had given everything to stand against the alien invaders, and yet they had succeeded where no one thought they could. Dr. Morales joined them, her gaze distant, haunted by what they had unleashed from the conduit. The pulse worked, but the readings from the conduit, it was different this time. The energy signature has shifted. "I think the conduit has awakened." Kara looked at her, eyes narrowing. "Awakened." Morales nodded, her voice somber. "Yes. It's almost as if it's a living entity, like it's aware of what we've done. The pulse wasn't just a burst of energy. It was a beacon, a warning." Riker exhaled sharply. "A warning to who?" Morales hesitated. "To whoever created it, whoever left it here, buried beneath the ice. They're out there, Kara, and now they know we're here too." The words sank in, a chill spreading through the group. Kara had suspected from the start that the conduit was more than just a weapon, but the thought that it might be a signal, a message to some ancient, advanced race, sent a shiver down her spine. Still, they had won, for now. They had pushed back the aliens, forced them to retreat, and shown them that humanity would not surrender. And in the face of such impossible odds, they had found strength within themselves they hadn't known existed. "We can't let fear dictate our future," Kara said firmly, her voice carrying through the silence. "Whoever left that conduit, whatever comes next, we'll face it together. We've survived this, and we'll survive whatever else comes our way." The survivors murmured in agreement, their gazes hardening with newfound resolve. They had faced extinction and emerged victorious, and they would not let anyone take their world from them. But just as they began to move, a voice crackled through the comm system. It was Major Hart, the traitor who had nearly brought their downfall. Kara's eyes narrowed, her jaw clenching as she listened to the faint, mocking tone. "Well, Captain Voss," he sneered, his voice laced with contempt, "you may have survived this round, but you haven't won. The aliens left because they chose to, not because you forced them. And when they return, they'll bring a force beyond anything you can imagine." Kara took a slow breath, steadying herself. "Hart, wherever you are, remember this. You threw in with them, and you lost. You're on the wrong side of history, and when we meet again, it'll be the last time." A bitter laugh echoed over the calm, then static. Hart was gone, his betrayal a fresh wound, but one Kara knew would only fuel their resolve. The next days were spent combing through the wreckage, gathering survivors, and rebuilding their defenses. Messages of hope spread across the remnants of Earth's communication network, inspiring pockets of resistance around the globe. People began to come out from hiding, joining Kara's forces, drawn by stories of the impossible victory in New York. They brought their own resources, their own stories of survival, and their own fierce determination to fight for Earth. Riker approached Kara one evening, a small smile on his face. "We've got people from all over, California, Texas, even some from Europe. They're calling it the Battle of Earth, saying it's the moment we proved we're not just survivors. We're warriors." Kara managed a small smile. "Let them call it whatever they want. What matters is that we're here, and we're ready." Dr. Morales interrupted, a thoughtful look on her face. "Kara, I've been thinking. The conduit, if it was a beacon, then we need to prepare for more than just the aliens we've fought. There could be others, maybe even more powerful than we can imagine." Kara's expression turned serious. "Then we make sure they know we're not a world that can be taken. We send a message of our own." In the days that followed, Morales and her team repurposed the conduit, adjusting its settings until it pulsed with a steady, unmistakable signal, a message broadcast to the stars. It was a warning, a statement, and a promise that Earth was no longer a world for the taking. As they activated the signal, Kara watched the conduit pulse, its light casting a brilliant glow over the battered city. She felt a swell of pride and determination as she realized that, for the first time since the invasion began, they were not just reacting to their enemies. They were declaring their place in the universe. Riker joined her, his gaze fixed on the conduit's steady light. "Think they'll listen?" Kara smirked. "They'll listen, and they'll remember." She looked out at the horizon, the ruins of her world stretching out before her. "We've shown them what humanity is capable of, and if they ever come back, we'll be ready." With that, she turned, leading her people back to the task of rebuilding their world. They had faced the impossible, and they had survived. And now, with their beacon shining across the universe, they had sent a message to any who would dare challenge them again. Earth was not a place for the taking. It was home to a force that would fight, endure, and ultimately emerge victorious. The aliens had underestimated humanity once. They would not make the same mistake twice.